Okay, Old Man 03 here, and this is a limited slip differential that I got from a 2001 Nissan Xterra, and I've also super packed the friction disc and friction plates, spring plates, to increase the breakaway torque. And the higher the breakaway torque of your limited slip differential, the longer it can act like a locker. So most Nissan R50 Pathfinders have the open differential in the rear, and when one wheel on your axle loses traction, the engine sends all engine torque to the wheel with no traction. So that means the wheel with traction doesn't get any engine torque and it doesn't spin, so your vehicle is stuck. Now with a like a real locker, both wheels receive equal amounts of engine torque. So even if one wheel loses traction, the other wheel on the same axle is able to spin, receive engine torque, and move your vehicle. Now with the limited slip differential, when you have a limited slip differential with a low breakaway torque, that means, so let's say for example you have 30 foot-pounds of breakaway torque. So that means if a wheel with no traction and another wheel with traction, it only takes 30 foot-pounds of one wheel turning against the other wheel to essentially make your limited slip differential into a open differential. And when that happens, you can be stuck because the wheel with traction will not spin anymore. So the higher the breakaway torque, the more likely your limited slip differential will act like a locker. Okay, so this is a 4.63 gear limited slip differential, and I will be super packing it to try to get more torque holding force. And super packing involves removing some parts and installing more parts, so that it's a more capable differential, limited slip differential. So here are some of the components. You have side bearing adjuster, and you have two of these. So one on this side and one on this side, and it's held in place with two locks. So one lock on this side and one lock on this side. This is the bearing cap. This is one half of the differential case, and this side is the other half of the differential case. The ring gear, and these bolts, these big bolts, hold the ring gear to this half of the differential case. These bolts, these inner bolts, hold the two halves of the differential case together, and inside here you have some pinion mate gears and your pinion mate shaft, the side gear, and then inside you have your pack of friction plates and friction discs. Same thing on this other side, friction plates and friction discs. So before you take apart your limited slip differential, it's a good idea to mark this bearing cap to this half of the housing. So I use a punch hammer. So I made 2 marks here, 2 marks here, 2 marks here, 2 marks here. So when you take it apart, you want to keep this bearing race and this bearing associated with this bearing cap in this area, because the bearing and the bearing race have been worn in together. And some people say it doesn't really matter if you get them mixed up because they're worn out anyways, but sometimes you want to keep them together because they're worn in together. So if you don't have a dial indicator to measure the ring gear to pinion backlash, so the way you can measure it is you put a dial indicator here and you move this back and forth, the ring gear back and forth, and there should be very little play, 0.005 to 0.007 of an inch. And the way it's adjusted is you rotate this gear and this side bearing adjuster and the other side bearing adjuster in clockwise to make it tighter, so less play backlash, because too much backlash you'll feel it. See, I'm pushing on the ring gear. So if you don't have a dial indicator, so let me show you what a dial indicator looks like. Well, I don't have it here with me. So what you can do instead is place some marks on your side bearing adjuster and back it out maybe 2 complete turns, so that when you take out the differential case, the side bearings stay in place. So you might need a assistant to hold these in place like this while you pull this out. So the steps in pulling this whole assembly out, this whole differential case, to remove these 2 bearing caps, 4 I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, remove the side bearing adjuster lock, so that this keeps the side bearing adjuster in place. Okay, so remove 2 of these and hold the side bearing adjuster in. So you might need an assistant, and pry this out. Sometimes you have to use a screwdriver to pry it out, or you can just pull it out. It's up to you. Okay, so again, side bearing adjuster, you tighten or loosen to adjust the backlash, the ring gear backlash. So that should be 0.005 to 0.007 of an inch. Can you hear it? So that's very little play. And this is the differential case housing. One half of it, the other half is here, held in place. The 2 parts of the differential cases are held in place by these small bolts. The ring gear is held in place by these big bolts. You don't need to remove the ring gear from the differential case. You can leave it intact, but you'll need to remove these bolts in order to take apart your differential case and repack your friction plates and friction discs. Alright. Okay. First thing to do is loosen the side bearing lock. Loosen and remove the side bearing adjuster lock. Back out the side bearing adjuster, maybe 1 or 2 complete turns. If you have the right tool, it's easy, but I'll use my screwdriver. I put 2 marks here on the side bearing adjuster. Okay, 2 turns. Now to remove the bolts to the bearing caps. So that one's all the way out. That one's out. This one is almost out. Holding the side adjuster in, pulling the cap off. So here's the side bearing adjuster, bearing race, and bearing. Okay, do the same thing to this side. Try to keep the same components separated. Okay, so here's the bearing cap, holding down the side bearing adjuster. Keep it on its own side, the right side. So now carefully remove the differential housing without affecting the side bearing adjusters. There. Okay. Now's a good time to tie wrap the bearing adjuster to its corresponding bearing cap, because they're worn in together. So you have a bearing here, and then you have like that little piece is a holder, and then some friction plates inside. So this is one half of the differential case. This other side is the other half differential case. We're going to be removing these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bolts to take apart the differential case. So removing the differential case bolts, you can use a vise to hold the differential case. I'm using 2 wrenches. Bolts haven't been removed. Now this can be taken apart. So that's what it looks like. 2 halves. Okay, taking apart this half of the differential. You have your side gear. This is the differential, one half of the differential case housing. You got a bearing here, and then inside here you have your friction guide. Two of them. They keep the disc in place. So I'm going to pull them out. So I'm going to place them in order in relationship to the side gear. So this is the order I have. I plan to do the Superpack of the differentials discs. You have your side gear. You have a friction plate, friction disc, friction plate, friction disc, then a friction plate, friction disc, friction plate, friction disc, friction plate, spring disc, spring plate with these tabs, and a spring plate. And these three are in parallel like this. Okay? So like that, 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 that. So that's what it should look like. Okay. When you're sorting out your collection of spring plates and spring discs and friction plates and friction discs, find the thickest ones possible. You know, take multiple measurements, like here, 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 and the combined height of the stack of discs should be around 20.4 millimeters. You can download on the internet field service manuals that will give you exact measurements. Okay, and there's different ways of installing these into the case. Okay, so Nissan this is, I'm going to show you Nissan's method. They alright, you have your friction plate, friction disc, spring plate, spring disc, and spring plate with tabs. And when you're measuring your friction plates and friction discs, look for flatness and look for measure for thickness. 4 spots. Gotta zero it out. So disc, friction plate, about 1.51 millimeters. .51, another spot, 1.57, and you want to look for worn out spots on your spring plates and spring discs. Okay, so you have your stack of friction plates and friction disc placed back onto your side gear, and this stack should be around 20.4 millimeters, and then you can individually measure each component at different spots around, and I placed my side gear on top of a large socket, put the friction plates on, friction plate guides, oil everything, and then you drop the assembly on. So these go over the friction plate guides. This is a little bit tricky. Got it. So that's what it should look like. You see it? Friction plate guides like that. Now the other half, you have your pinion mate gears, pinion mate washers, and this pinion mate cross assembly, forget what they call it exactly, and this is the other stack of plates and discs, and it's the same layout as the other side. Okay. slippery. So this is demonstration purposes. I haven't cleaned these and haven't really measured every plate and every disc. Alright. Same as the other side. Wow, first try. Okay. Place the gears, pinion mate gears, washers back on. Okay, it's down. Now the two halves of the differential case have a alignment mark from the factory. If you don't see one, you have to make your own, okay? Because you want to get it back into alignment. And there's the alignment mark there. Alignment mark there. So I'm holding in the side gear so it doesn't fall out, and dropping it down. So there it is. See, alignment marks lined up. You hold it together, flip it over. Now tighten the differential case housing bolts in a cross pattern. I think you torque it down to 55 foot-pounds, I think. Okay, cross pattern. Well, close to a cross pattern. I think I messed up, but you guys get the idea. Take a look at your two halves of your differential. See if they're mated together correctly. Alignment mark. All right. Now put this back into the housing. It is heavy. Oh, forgot the races. Okay. Bolt in the cap, bearing caps, loosely. Don't tighten down because you want to turn in the side bearing adjusters so that way you get the backlash corrected. So, turn in. So okay, so I got the side bearings adjusters in, and now backlash is much better. Tighten the bearing cap bolts. I forget what torque. It might be 100 pounds. 100 foot-pounds. Okay, doing the other side. I forget what torque pounds these are, but shouldn't be too much. Done. So, minimal backlash. To do it the right way, you need to get a dial indicator, place it against the ring gear tooth, and measure how much it backlashes back and forth. Should be 5/1000ths to 7/1000ths of an inch, and you do it at multiple spots on the ring gear. Okay, multiple spots. Another measurement you can take is the pinion backlash using a inch-pounds torque wrench, and that should be very little. I think around 8 inch-pounds, something like that. So it's very little force. But since you're super packing it, you're not touching the pinion gear at all, so you really don't need to mess with it unless you want to take measurements. Okay, so that's it. So again, recap. Mark your bearing cap on at least one side, so that way you keep the bearing cap, the bearings, and the bearing race on the same side that it was originally on, because it's worn in. You remove, first you loosen these bearing caps, remove this side adjuster locking bit piece. You put marks on your side adjusting gear, and you rotate it back maybe 2 turns. Same thing on this side, rotate it back 2 turns. Hold the side adjusting gear in, then you can pull out the bearing cap. Do it on both sides. You might need an assistant, and then you can pull out your carrier and then take it apart, repack your friction discs and friction plates, reassemble, clean, reassemble it. Another measurement you can take is ring gear lash out. It should be okay, but if you notice it So you put your dial indicator here on this spot, and you rotate it, and if there's too much difference, then you need to take it apart and look for any particles that might have gotten stuck during reassembly. So that's why you got to clean your items, so that way there's no particles interfering with the mating of surfaces. So clean it really well. So measuring ring gear backlash. If there's too much backlash, you can tighten this side adjuster and loosen this one. If there's too little backlash, loosen this side adjuster and tighten this side adjuster. So I got this down to 0.3 of an inch. So you hold the pinion shaft and then move the ring gear back and forth, and that's about 0.3 of an inch. I'm trying to keep the pinion from spinning. It's about 0.3 to 0.5 of an inch.